Player of the Year in 2019 on the SCG Tour. He had the lead coming in over Harlan Fear, and now is just growing that lead.
Wouldn't it just be an incredible story to win the last Open of the year and lock up that Player of the Year slot?
Yeah. With that, Zan almost certain to be at the Players' Championship come December in Roanoke, Virginia. Meantime, just we look at all these players here who are searching points this weekend. I mean, let's look at Lotus Box for a second. Jeremy Bertarioni was in second place in the Season 2 standings. This top 4 finish is great. This is going to just really propel him up the standings. And I would have bet going into the Invitational, he's going to overtake Harlan Fear, first place for the season. This should lock him for the PC.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that this doesn't just basically lock that up for him.
Yeah, Dominic Harvey winning the Standard Classic today. It's funny, I was talking with Edgar Maguies. Right now, the bubble for 2019, the overall standings, is between Edgar and Ross Merriam. And, you know, Edgar top-8'd and lost in top 8, and he was telling me he's not sure he's going to move up any positions with the top 8.
Yep.
And what an event.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a spot where these players they're taking risks and it's paying off. You can see just how much work these players are putting in to try and find every little edge that they can. They brought a new and improved version of what was already kind of assumed to be the best deck in the format.
Right, so we look at the cutoff here for Player of the Year, players being invited to the Players' Championship. Right now, it looks like Ross Merriam is the last person in, Edgar the first person out. But you go beneath that, I mean, Collins Mullen was in top 4. He was on the bubble. If he wins this tournament, he will actually move in and knock both players out. Austin Collins did lose in top 8, but really inserted himself into the conversation here.
Right. Exactly. Just having all kinds of strong finishes all around this area, knowing that, say, Jonathan Hobbs just had a 10-5. He might end up paying for that.
Yeah, Ross Merriam was 11-4. It's just pretty wild here, and it's going to make for an interesting Invitational in 3 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. It is a situation where very frequently you'll kind of have 2-3 people who, not to say there aren't more people that matter, but 2 or 3 where you can expect enough mobility to actually change the conversation. But now we're looking at a dozen people.
Yeah, a great week for Lotus Box, and honestly, it's going to move up the standings. A player who really is going to move down this week. Erin Barrich now moving onto the bubble for that spot in the Players' Championship.
Right. She put up just a 10-5 record as well this week, and that's not quite going to be good enough when everyone else is succeeding at this level.
Right. I mean, 10-5, it's a day 2. It's not that bad, but when everyone else is top-8ing events and winning classics, 10-5 may not be enough.
Right, and that's kind of that's the wild thing. That's how competitive these events are, and these races end up being towards the end.
Yeah, so points on the line here. We mentioned Zan. Pretty much this top 4 should be good enough to be the overall season leader. But looking at the other side of the bracket, that Collins Mullen and Jeremy Bertarioni matchup, the winner of this could really just give themselves let it so they can rest easy at the Invitational.
Right. If Bertarioni ends up making the finals, it's already feeling like he's pretty close to a soft lock just on these seasonal points. But Collins, it feels like he's kind of fighting for his life here, and if he could win the tournament, that would be 30 points. That would be so much. That would skyrocket him up to the top 10, more than likely. Yeah,
if he wins this match, he will tie. I believe he'll come into an exact tie with Edgar, and winning the match, he will pass Edgar and perhaps Ross as well.
Right.
So a lot on the line here. Those 2 players, Bertarioni and Collins, playing a mirror match on the backup table. Holland, though, picked up that first win. And honestly, Colin doing a favor for the Wurza decks. If there was one matchup that seemed like they were weak against, it was the Devoted Devastation deck. Mm-hmm. 1 copy in the top 8. It was unfortunate that he drew Grixis Death Shadow, which may have been his only bad matchup in the top 8.
Easily the worst thing for him to play against. It is just something that actually is able to interact with these early combo pieces that the Devoted Druid deck wants to present.
It plays removal. So, Holland, Cycle Street Wraith, That's to 18. Fetches to 17. Shocks to 15. The good Thoughtseize, we can all be all the way into Death Shadow territory.
Now, I'll tell you, I've played a Grixis Death Shadow deck or two in my day, and you love a good Thoughtseize.
And it's going to be a discard spell. It is Thoughtseize all the way down to 13. On Zan's side, a trio of fetch lands. Engineered Explosives, Bauble, Opal, and Emery. This is really good.
This is a nice hand, and a lot of times with Death Shadow, it's whatever it is you're trying to pick apart, the thing that matters. So the 3 lands, Mox Opal, all those kind of do the same thing. Here, we're likely going to see the Emery get taken if Holland doesn't have a removal spell, and the Engineered Explosives get taken if he does have a removal spell and is planning to lean on Death Shadow.
I just think that was, on Zan's turn, would have been a turn 1 Emery. And it's the Thoughtseize bug.
This is like 4th time we've seen this weekend.
Just draws the Emery. They draw the card you Thoughtseize. That's it, and it's a legend.
Can you believe
it's just the worst.
Zan is going to cast all the spells in his hand this turn.
He even has enough mana to put the explosives on 1.
Right.
Right, normally you'd have to put it on 0, but in this matchup, 1 is where you want Engineered Explosives. So card, and now John gets to hear the bad news, which is that he drew the Emery. And Mills of Gilded Goose, Cryptic Command, Arkham's Astrolabe, and Misty Rainforest.
And this is a spot where Holland really needs to try and have his threat be something like Gurmag Angler.
Right, something with a
Was
big
that an
converted
Angler
mana
off the
cost.
top?
Okay. He has one. I believe so. So now he needs to get... This should be easy enough with a fetch land. It's card number 4 into the graveyard. 2 lands. Just one more source of mana should do it.
A Thought Scour, you could even make a case for interacting with the Emery, where even if you aren't making the Angler this turn, it's still just kind of buying you an extra turn's worth of tempo, which kind of washes. Bauble, Street Wraith make it happen.
Yeah, any sort of 0. Thought Scour. There we go. That's going to do it.
Okay.
Have the 5/5 online this turn. 2 cards into his own graveyard. Doesn't really matter. It's just a pair of fetch lands. But those are food for the Angler. And he'll keep going. Cycling Street Wraith. And there we go. Gurmag Angler, full delve of 6, makes the 1 mana 5/5. One of the payoff threats here for Grixis Death Shadow. Zan cracks Bauble. He's going to want that one in the graveyard so that Emery can bring it back. John all the way down to 8 self-inflicted damage here. And for Zan, some sequencing here. So it's going to be Bauble to check his top card. Sees whether he wants it. That'll affect what land he plays. It's going to be a fetch land. It gives him the opportunity to shuffle before he draws that card. And that's exactly what he's going to do. And Zan's side just really feels like defense here.
Yeah,
Right.
this is a spot where if Zan can just stick something like an Oko, then it's going to run away with the game, because these Death Shadow decks are planning to ride 1, maybe 2 threats to victory, and Oko flies in the face of that.
Right, if he can land one. On the other hand, if the untap happens, it's going to be pretty tough for Zan to pull that off. Stubborn Denial is the kind of card that works very well with Gurmag Angler.
All right, and here's that untap.
Another Street Wraith drawn for John. At this point, he needs to be a bit concerned about cycling it.
Do you think that Emery can race Gurmag Angler?
Well, Emery's a 1/2, but it's close. Swing for 5, Zan to 13.
Look, they're both water things.
So who swims faster? That's the question.
Well, I imagine the fish, not the person carrying a sword.
But it's a zombie fish. It doesn't have to sleep.
Oh my! That's how you know it swims faster. It trains 24/7.
Maybe zombies are slower, but but they don't have to eat. They don't have to sleep. The race is going to be... depends on the length of the race.
Listen, here's the way I see it. Emery's not even swimming. She's just...
lurking.
You get it.
Attack again here by Gurmag Angler, and mana up for John.
Okay, so it looks like Syed has picked up a copy of this Thopter Foundry. And this is something that actually can just buy Zan a ton of time.
Yeah, a Thopter Foundry from Zan, because it gains life, it makes 1/1 blockers. If John has a Stubborn Denial, this will probably earn the card from his hand.
Right, he'll likely have to cast it, and because of Emery, it's a complicated spot where Zan could just recast it again from the graveyard.
Well, and that's the difficulty here too, right? Is that, I mean, first of all, Sword of the Meek's a card. If you don't counter this, you might just start losing to Thopter Sword.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how do you really get rid of it? I mean, Emery's still around. I guess, like, ideally, Kolaghan's command would answer both halves of this. But Thopter Foundry resolves. So Zan will sack Mox Opal, make a Thopter, gain a life. Has another Mox Opal in the hand, so this is pretty free.
The big problem with Kolaghan's command is there are not any copies of the card in the main deck here.
Okay, so we're only going to have that game too. And actually, players in elimination rounds get deck lists, so Zan knows this.
Mm-hmm.
Arkham's Astrolabe, Mox Opal. Emery going to bring back a Mishra's Bauble. And this really actually answers the race.
Right.
I don't think John can win a race from here. And you might wonder whether Zan can make Thopters fast enough to chump block and just race back.
Yeah, this is a spot where Holland is only at 6 life. He needs something like maybe a Royal Scions to get through this.
End step Snapcaster Mage, Thought Scour. Puts Stubborn Denial, Death's Shadow into the graveyard. Yeah, maybe does he have Temur Battle Rage, though? I believe he does.
Right, he has 2 copies of Battle Rage and 1 copy of the Royal Scions in his main deck.
All right. Another swing with Gurmag Angler. Just a block with the Thopter. That's, you see a nod here from Holland. Gotta get that Emery off the board.
Yeah, and not having any way to answer this copy of Thopter Foundry in the main deck is just, it's so huge here.
Yeah, actually looking at the list, you're right, there just isn't an answer for it. It is on the board for the rest of this game. Second Gurmag Angler for Holland is not bad. This is going to force Zan to maybe get a true combo going.
Right, and this is a spot where this is actually enough threats that if Zan doesn't actually kill Holland, he might start to run out of resources from trump blocking all of these Gurmag Anglers.
Right. 1 Thopter a turn because he had Emery seemed pretty doable.
Mm-hmm.
Emery will give him an artifact each turn. 2 artifacts might, or 2 jump blockers a turn might even be doable, but that takes a lot of his mana.
Exactly.
I still think it's within range for Zan to be able to make 2 Thopters a turn. Confirm here. Looks like there was a missed trigger. And we're going to see what the judge's resolution is to this. Yeah. And looks like he still can draw the card here.
Sure.
Emery brings back Mishra's Bauble again. And that's a bit of a tell, right? On this board, you frequently would see them bring back Arkham's Astrolabe.
So at this point, we just see Syed very interested in making a ton of Thopters.
Right.
To send on the way back.
Well, right, but if you want... I want to try to read into this play. Zan's on side. If you want to make Thopters, you'd get back Astrolabe, because it draws you the card, then it turns into a Thopter.
But it costs a mana.
But it costs a mana.
Exactly.
Because I see Bobble's an either or, so then you start wondering on John's side, what do you need all that mana for? What's actually in your hand?
Mm-hmm. And see, this is a spot where even a Temur Battle Rage isn't going to kill Syed, because every time you make a Thopter, you're going to gain a life.
Right. Syed checks his own top card. I believe he has Whir of Invention in his hand, and that's one of the things we're looking for here.
Right.
Fetches down to 14, getting an island. That Whir in his hand kind of might show why he's so taxed on mana. But he will make a Thopter by sacrificing Arkham's Astrolabe. I suppose he can block and then use Whir of Invention.
Mm-hmm. It's just a safe way to do it here.
See, Cryptic Command. Maybe is that hiding out in Zan's hand? We'll have to see. It might just be that Whir. So, both Thopters block. Fetch here from Holland. He's got some good pressure going. Looking to add a little more. And it might be a Death Shadow here. It's actually going to be Fatal Push. That's big. That's
that
because he
actually
fetched.
turns off the card advantage engine.
Yeah, that takes out the Emery. That's going to have to force Cryptic Command from Zan. He's going to counter, and well, he's going to do nothing. It's going to get Stubborn Denied.
Oh, and this means that Zan also doesn't get to activate Thopter Foundry this turn.
Right. Big turn from Holland, who's holding on to that Stubborn Denial for this line, passes back.
Did he spin this around?
Maybe. I mean, there's still a concern, right, if Zan has something like Urza into Sword of the Meek, then suddenly game's over.
Right, but it feels like it takes something specific like that, and otherwise Syed's just kind of behind on the battlefield.
Yeah, John leveraging that pressure pretty well. Now, Zan might get another turn. He is at 15, so I don't know that John can just one-shot him right here. But Zan does need help. He has another Emery. That mills over Whir, Emery, and 2 Okos. Most of those cards, things you would have been happy to see. Yeah. 2 cards left in the hand for Zan. He has his opponent tapped down here. Maybe it's a play. No, he just passes. He might be out of resource. Holland draws the card, just immediately sends. I love this. It's Whir of Invention from Zan. And John's going to need another Stubborn Denial. This isn't a big play. So he casts it for 3. Does John have it? Taps the blue mana. There it is. That's the counter he needs. No Sword of the Meek. It's a huge play here for John. And the attack continues.
And this is playing through a Thopter Foundry.
Right, this is through a Thopter Foundry. He's just whittling down these artifacts. And now Zan has to start making tough decisions. Mox Opal's going to get sacrificed. That makes a Thopter. You know, is Engineered Explosives next on the block? The answer is no. He just blocks a Gurmag Angler. He's hoping there's not a Temur Battle Rage. Actually looks like he's alive through that. So takes 7, drops down to 9, now down to 8. He's bought himself another turn. You see Zan fetches up Mystic Sanctuary. I guess he could rebuy a Cryptic Command.
And then with an Emery, that means that he'll basically get to lock Holland out of the combat step if Holland doesn't have any more Stubborn Denials.
Right, so this is something we've seen before.
Or
Whir of Invention. He's just going to go straight for Thopter Sword. I was expecting Cryptic, too. So is he going to force John to have a 3rd Stubborn Denial? I guess a Snapcaster Mage works here. There's 3 mana up.
And you almost have to feel like he has the Snapcaster since he just used that one on this one on a Thought Scour earlier.
That makes sense, especially on a board where a 2-1 wasn't very good.
Right.
Emery gets back Arkham's Astrolabe. Zan's willing to pay the mana to get the card right now. Also gives him more food for that Thopter Foundry. And head in hands for Zan Syed. He's staying alive here, but it's just so close. Breeding Pool put him down to 6. And it gets Gilded Goose. Just one card left for him.
I think we know what it is.
I think we know what it is. It's the War of Invention. But it means he doesn't have defense to a Snapcaster Mage. And I think he's just reading his opponent on having one. But going to go for it on John's turn. Does it resolve? John needs Snapcaster or Stubborn Denial. He's waiting for Zan to tap that mana for Improvise. Does it work? Zan asks. This is a big question.
It works.
And the answer is yes. John, 2 cards in hand, but neither of them interact here, and now things are really tough for John.
John still wins with a Battle Rage.
Yeah, a Battle Rage does it this turn. I don't know how many turns it's going to be good for. I guess Zan is at 6, so maybe there's a chance. 3 cards in hand for Holland. But the board, unless his creatures can get trample somehow, this just isn't going to matter. Well, this turn, hold on, there's not... How much mana is there up for Zan?
1.
So he has a Gilded Goose blocks.
And then you make a Thopter with the sword.
Okay, so you have 2 blockers, and you gain 1. So Zan's was going to go to 5. Once he untaps, things are okay.
Yes.
Can John stop this from happening? Doesn't just a Fatal Push do it then? An Angler gets through. A Snapcaster Mage, there's a Fatal Push in the yard, and that was the draw for the turn. So if you Fatal Push the Gilded Goose, hold on. I think this works.
God.
Is this going to be exact?
No way.
Goose okay. No, this Goose is cooked.
Oh my God.
A full swing. You see John, he's counted it out. Zan up to 7 on the sacrifice, makes a blocker, blocks the biggest thing. There's exactly 7 coming through. And yeah, John does it. And you see it on Zan's face. He counts it out. John Holland takes game 1.
God, that was unbelievable. I have to give it to Holland.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
And you see on Zan's face, he shakes his head. He knows the Snapcaster came off the top because they were resolved.
Yeah, and there's even a point where you can just see him sort of going,
oh, no.
Where was it? There had to be somewhere, but where?
Yeah, you just have to feel like in that situation, you have to go back and watch and say, did I leave a point of damage anywhere on the table?
Unbelievable.
You know, was there a fetch maybe that didn't have to happen? I don't know, something like that.
Right.
But you have it with that. John Holland takes game number 1 here, holding on against an active Thopter Sword combo.
Well,
this is nice stuff.
It felt like he punched through a sword.
Yeah.
More than the combo.
So we have Holland up a game. We're going to look at some sideboarding here. For Zan Syed, 3 Damping Spheres, 3 Fatal Pushes, 2 Drown in the Locks, a bunch of 1-ofs. We have seen players go toward control decks frequently when playing Simic Wars Up.
Right, so I think that Syed's going to be interested in doing that here because when you lean into these high synergy payoff situations, you end up kind of falling short because you can just have your important cards picked apart. You know, we saw a couple of times there, it felt like Syed was hanging by a thread when Holland just answered Emery all of a sudden. But if you lean into some more grindy options, Drown in the Lock, Fatal Push, Ensnaring Bridge, those types of effects, you actually just have more cards that matter, and it's more difficult for Shadow to answer everything.
Choose that. For John Holland, he gets game 1, and now gets to play those Kolaghan commands we were talking about.
Kolaghan's command, Engineered Explosives, likely going to see the Royal Scions come in. Mystical Dispute is something that I could absolutely see coming in to check Oko. Plague Engineer's even good against the Thopter Sword combo.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested in that one because they both know now, off the deck list, that Zan has only 1 copy of Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the Royal Scions. One in the main and one in the board. There was a lot of that card for John Holland.
Right, and this is a card that has started to make waves in the Shadow deck, and we saw Donegan, Dylan Donegan, another Lotus Box member, doing well at regionals last weekend with a copy of the deck in his Grixis Death Shadow deck.
So you want some of these most recent modern deck lists, check out Versus Live. This is something else on our channel here, twitch.tv/StarCityGames. Every Tuesday and Thursday, it's some of the top players on the SCG Tour playtest top decks of the format and discuss their plays as they battle.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's incredibly interactive with chat. You watch people sideboard, learn why they sideboard, and that's one of the hardest things to do in Magic.
See both players with those deck lists. Mentioned it is open deck list in the elimination rounds. Though only between games. Once the game starts, they do have to put the decks away. Cannot reference them during a game. And looks like they have made decisions. So Zan will be on the play here for our second game. So talking about the Royal Scions, it's one of our newest cards here out of Eldraine. We're seeing it in Grixis Death's Shadow. What has it added to the deck?
So the nice thing that it does is it gives a layer of consistency to the deck that has a bunch of moving parts for something that's fair. A lot of times you want specific kinds of interaction in different matchups. So especially during game one, having a looting effect is great. It also helps mitigate flooding, which has historically been a little bit of a problem for Death Shadow when your deck has so much air. Finally, just giving your deck additional forms of reach that aren't complete do-nothings when you draw them alone. So one of the problems with something like Timur Battle Rage is if you draw multiple copies of it, it's pretty likely that the card, your second copy, is almost like a mulligan because it's not going to do anything. The Royal Scions, on the other hand, is repeatable, and with something that isn't going to hit in huge game-ending chunks like Death Shadow, Scions is going to be better with, say, Gurmag Angler, where you're going to need to get multiple attacks in.
And not to mention, if you draw both copies, that solves its own problem. They can draw and discard.
There's also a point where it's hard to apply pressure against a tempo deck when you're already on the back foot, so the Royal Scions Ultimate does come into play more than you would assume.
Certainly out of Zan, a deck that basically never attacks.
Right.
See. Opener here. Some early Street Wraiths. Multiple Street Wraiths, Stubborn Denial, one land. It's not blue. Do you keep these when you play the deck?
I would be inclined to mulligan in Holland's seat, but I can't fault him for keeping it on the draw.
Love it. Not even close. He has kept it. For Zan. Astrolabe. Bauble. Do we see a Mox Opal? We do not. Thoughtseize for Holland, but he's digging. One Street Wraith. That's not a land. Two Street Wraiths down to 16. This is the big one. And
Watery Grave.
Watery Grave.
Oh, does it.
Rewarded. Had it the whole time.
Well,
Zan does it. Totally respectable keep on Zan.
Oh, yeah, you don't even think about it. In Zan's seat, you go, yep, Watery Grave. At least it wasn't a fetch land.
And we see now that transformational sideboard from Zan. And this is actually a really good Thoughtseize from Holland. I see two removal spells, Fatal Push, Drown in the Lock, and an Emery. And on a board here where there's a Bauble in play, this Thoughtseize is very straightforward.
So do you know what the opposite of a combo is? A non-bow.
Okay,
do you know what Gurmag Angler and Drown in the Lock are? Have you tried to drown a fish before, Matthias?
No, I don't think that's how that works.
Oh, it's a huge non-bow.
It's pretty hard to
Gurmag Angler exiles all the cards in Holland's graveyard, so then all of a sudden the Drown in the Lock is... Yeah, just back to square one.
Well, if he has 13 cards in the graveyard when he casts it, then you always kill it.
Yeah, at that point you're sending this zombie fish into the Mariana Trench. Of course it's going to die.
Another Thoughtseize from Holland, down to 10. Looks like Xan's picked up another Fatal Push. This is a really nice spot now for Gurmag Angler. Something that cannot be fatally pushed.
What are you going to do? Have you tried to push a fish before?
That's really hard. They just slip off. You can try to push them, but then they just move.
It sounds like you have some fish pushing experience.
I'm just saying, it just wouldn't work very well. What is it? Is the fish going to fall over? What does that even mean? So we do see sending back. John is still a couple cards short of Gurmag Angler. Aether Spellbomb for Zan. That one actually does work against fish.
That is combo adjacent.
That is annoying. It will require John to cast the Angler multiple times. Oh no, and actually he just has to pass. So that Landlight hand actually did catch up with Holland. And it's an opening for Zan. Something like Urza, if he finds it, would be very strong here.
Well, it looks like there's a Mystical Dispute hiding out in Holland's hand.
Okay. That should counter most of Zan's payoffs. Most of them are blue. I believe all of them are blue.
Right. The thing that Zan is hoping to draw here is another copy of Imri. All right, it looks like it's time for Zan to get some information back of a Thoughtseize.
Yeah, Thoughtseize here. And that actually is great. It's a way to get around that Mystical Dispute. We see now 2 Gurmag Anglers. Mystical Dispute, Stubborn Denial, Death's Shadow, Teamer, Battle Rage. This is actually interesting. John, I guess he didn't make the Death Shadow because why? There's 2 Fatal Pushes?
Right. I imagine he drew to the Death Shadow after that Spellbomb came down. Before, there would have been a consideration to just feed it to your graveyard in order to make a fish happen.
Okay.
But now, there's not even that much upside to the fish unless you can also deal with this Aether Spellbomb.
Be interesting to see what Zan takes here. The Gurmag Anglers feel like you want to leave them because there's 2 and you have a spell bomb, so taking one doesn't really do much.
Right, so the things you're probably looking at here are specifically Stubborn Denial and Mystical Dispute.
Yeah, that makes sense. Between those, it feels like Mystical Dispute's the better counter, but Zan's actually going a different way. He's going to take Gurmag Angler.
Sure, so the nice thing about this is Syed's assuming he's not ending the game anytime soon.
Yeah.
And in that case, he's going to have to answer all of these cards eventually. He might as well go ahead and keep going at the creatures because those are the things that will ultimately kill him.
Yeah, Zan's really committing to that control strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are enough cards in the graveyard for Gurmag Angler. Holland? John's got to get it going somehow. He's going to make Angler, delves away the whole graveyard into an Aether Spellbomb, says, yeah, I know how this ends, but it's going to happen at some point.
Come on and slam. Welcome to the jam. This is the point where Holland just kind of knows it's not getting any safer to do this.
And Zan, plenty of lands. Just hang out for a bit. Finds Gilded Goose. Because of the high power level, some of these finishers in Zan's deck, cards like Oko, Urza,
Gilded Goose.
John isn't unnoticed. I mean, Gilded Goose, yeah, it's 3 life a turn if you spend a ton of mana. I think John just says go, and now Zan's really taking advantage of things. Thought Scour. John starts to rebuild.
If you can find a fetch land here, this could be big.
Needs some mana, though. Did he find any? No, it looks like more counter spells. Now, Stubborn Denial, Mystic Dispute. Found the Royal Scions that turn?
Well, that'll eventually help fuel the graveyard and recast this Gurmag Angler.
Yeah. But things are getting trickier. We see Mystic Sanctuary from Zan. That'll put a card on top of his deck. And he'll choose Thoughtseize, draw the Thoughtseize, and now he's going to go for the other Angler. Or maybe the Scions, I guess we'll see. But right after the first Angler, I think he's kind of committed here to going for it again.
It's possible. It's a little bit tough because he knows he has some time before that Angler happens. I guess not with this Thought Scour, but the Royal Scions, he just is going to struggle to pressure if he doesn't have some sort of counterspell for it.
Decides that he will answer that problem when it happens. But I agree, it might be a tricky one.
Right. Without finding a red source, Holland can't even cast the Royal Scions.
Right. So, second Gurmag Angler gone. Zan still has those 2 fatal pushes. Leaving Holland with a bunch of counterspells. Mystic Dispute is starting to look like a card that may never get cast this game. And
all
Blood
right.
Crypt. Okay, there we go. For John, that is the card he wants. And he's going to go straight for the Planeswalker.
Oh, absolutely. Think about how much damage that card is with how slow this game has been. That ultimate could end up just 11, dealing 11 to Zan.
And I love this. He actually is going to discard Thought Scour. That was a bit surprising to me. I was kind of thought a Temur Battle Rage discard was coming because Scions are in play.
So here it may just be that he's looking, because he's choked on blue, he just wants to hold up counter spells with his blue mana forever.
That's actually a good point. With 1 blue mana, there's just no time to do that.
Exactly, and you already have something that's looting and giving you some selection and filling your graveyard that is likely just the weakest card, more so than a bad card.
And it looks like the actual plan is just to win the game with Royal Scions here. That -8, draw 4 cards, and then deal damage to Zan equal to the number of cards in hand. We're looking at, 10 or 11 damage. Goes for Death Shadow. Goes for another Death Shadow. There are 2 fatal pushes, but
These are 5/5 Death
happen.
Shadows now.
so fatal push on one of them for Zan, and he'll go for the other one. And John's going to fight. He's going to stubborn deny this. This is a shields down moment, and might have been a bit aggressive on John's side.
It is definitely aggressive, but it's a spot where if he gets to untap, it's hard to imagine losing from here.
I agree. A lot's on the line now. So we go to Zan.
Right. The longer the game goes, the worse it gets for Holland. He needs to pick his spots to try and actually win the game. You can't just tread water forever.
All right. You know what? I'm sold. I think we're right here. He needs to make that happen, and here's a Thoughtseize. All right, you see Temur Battle Rage. And you just feel like Zan has to take Temur Battle Rage. I think he'll die to it otherwise.
Yeah, that represents, 14 damage next turn?
Yeah, Royal Scions plus on the Death Shadow, double strike it.
Is there a weird world where it's actually Dismember nets damage with Temur Battle Rage? So
It does. That is, you lose 4 life, they lose 8. So you can't really take Mystical Dispute. Yeah, I think it just has to be Temur Battle Rage.
Yeah, so you could theoretically just dismember the Goose, roll up for the +2/+0 ability with Scions and Battle Rage.
Right. And this is where Zan's going to be in trouble, because next turn Death Shadow hits him, and then the Royal Scions threatens ultimate to win the game.
Oof. There is a lot of food over there.
So just Zan can start gaining a lot of life.
It's time to eat.
He can just pig out over here and maybe get himself a turn.
Yeah.
Plus here, this Death Shadow attacking for 7 with Trample. Zan down to 4. He has to answer Royal Scions. Makes a food token. Confirm here that I think Zan's on 4. Yeah, he's going to read that ultimate. It's not good news. Draw 4 cards and then deal damage equal to the number of cards in your hand, which will be a lot.
So I'm going to level with you. I'm not convinced Holland's even going to look to ult that next turn.
Just wins on the attack?
He can ult the next turn and still have a Royal Scions left.
What is this next turn we're talking about?
Look, so Zan can go down to 3, up to 6.
You're right. It might be the safer play to just 2-0 first strike. Mystic Sanctuary fetched up from Zan. Is there a card in his graveyard that answers Scions?
I don't believe there's one that answers Scions, but there is a Fatal Push.
See, but in that case, if you push the Death Shadow, then I think John is ultimating.
Sure.
And have a light issue here. We'll see whether or not the judge continues them to play as we get that resolved. All right. So we go back here. Looks like there's still the ability to play on, so they are going to. And Thought Scour from Holland. Gets 2 lands, 2 fetch lands into the graveyard. And Fatal Push from Zan. That was the card he got off the top, but correct me if I'm wrong here, the Scions, does it kill him? I guess he can gain 6 life off the food tokens.
Right.
And that is the point. He's hoping then to stabilize. Yeah. John, I don't think with enough cards in hand to deal 12.
No, and this Instep Dismember is kind of him taking a card out of his hand to a point says that he's not likely going to ult that Scions this turn.
Okay. I suppose you're right. It's just easy, and you can have it both ways.
Oh, he gets to see Zan's top card with his Meteor's Bauble to see if it's safe.
Sure, if it's safe to do that. And then he discards a land. Says go. Yeah, next turn I think he draws 4 off Scions.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Back to Zan we go. John draws a card. Zan at 12. Still 1 food token left. Top card was a land. John knew it. Back to Holland. And this looks like he's going to head toward the finals. Here are 4 more cards coming in. Drawing up to, I believe, 8. This should send Zan down to 4. Not a bad turn here for Holland. Gets to that ultimate on the Planeswalker. And yeah, there's probably a threat in here somewhere.
John going, you know what? I would love to cast some spells.
Well, it's actually just Thought Scour for now. Mills over the Gurmag Angler.
Close.
Looks like he found Snapcaster Mage, though. That should work.
God, I wish the top card of my deck was a threat. Monkey's Paw Curls.
Just has to find a way for 4 more damage.
Snapcaster Mage is surprisingly effective at attacking for almost 4.
Yeah. End step for 2. End step it in, attack for 2. Figure out a way to do it again, and we do see Snapcaster in his hand. I guess you can Team or Battle Rage it. You can Royal Scions it. It's just a 1-hit kill.
So there's another food over on Zan's side of the battlefield.
You Team or Battle Rage and Royal Scions it. Boom, figured it out. There we go. That's 12.
Close.
That's 8. There we go.
There you go.
Team or Battle Rage doesn't give another 2-0. It's still enough. And now it is not enough. Another goose from Zan.
And this is something that a lot of control decks are just going to be good at, is not dying. If Zan's honestly just treading water here, but he is not literally losing the game.
So it looks like it's just going to be Fatal Push on the goose. And Snapcaster just as a 2-1? Yes, it is. He was hoping there was a Fatal Push in his graveyard. There wasn't. Oh, well.
Snakecaster Mage.
2-1. Ambush Viper sneaks onto the board. +2/+0. Swings in. When Zan goes up to 7. Gonna go up to 10. Get himself 1 more turn.
He likely keeps leaving this other food on the battlefield so he can make it a 3/3 with Oko.
In case he draws one. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense. Now, I think there is still a Mystic Dispute, but yeah, Zan has enough mana to pay. Down to his last draw. Is it going to do it? It might. Here's Emery.
Emery's a big one.
Mills over some good ones, Oko and Urza, but Emery's still here. Back to John we go. 8 with Trample. Believe that's good enough, right? 2-0, so now it's a 4-1. It's a 4-1 double strike Trample. It attacks. Even if you gain the food, you go up to 6. You block. You're still taking
You're
6.
And that is gonna do it.
Yeah, Zan Syed hangs on, but John Holland takes the win. 2-0 with Grixis Death Shadow. Our 1 seed is into the finals.
And That was so well navigated on Holland's part. I'm honestly impressed. There was a lot where he was incredibly patient when he needed to be. He picked his spots really well, and it felt like there were a couple of turns where Zan could have top decked something, but for the most part, that was Holland's match.
That's Holland's match. That's what he wants to do, and he's going to get a chance to do it again because he's going to be in the finals. So be the 1 seed. He has to just execute that game plan again, and I think he wins the tournament.
Another one.
Yeah. In the meantime, we do have one more match. It is a match between the last two Simic Wurza players on the backup table. This is Collins Mullen and Jeremy Bertarioni. The big thing here is that has to do, I think, with the Players' Championship. The winner here is really moving themselves toward it. If Bertarioni wins, he should be good. If Collins wins, it gets interesting.
Yeah, so Bertarioni is in a spot where he's looking really good on seasonal standings right now, and even just making top 4 of this tournament is so big for him. Collins, on the other hand, is kind of on the outside of the conversation at the moment, and a finals or even a win would just skyrocket his odds, especially going into the invitational weekend.
Yeah, once you're in the top 8 of these tournaments, every win is worth 5 more points.
Yes, and that is a lot.
All right, we will head down to the match. This one's currently in progress. In a game